Stop putting on airs. Your deaths are inevitable.
The original demon remarked, brandishing his shield with a dark grin adorning his face.
Nobody will make it in time to save you.
Before Merlin could teleport and attack, the two mages and the axe-wielding warrior sensed something strange. Are you sure about that? A dimensional rift opened in space, and a young blue-haired man dropped down. Thanks for the help, Uncle Sinbad. The young man looked around, confused. He had come on a mission to communicate with this world's people to establish an alliance with them. However, he landed in a corrupted land coated with darkness and destruction, and on his way he heard a declaration of slaughter.
Who are you?
The original demon asked, brandishing his weapons. However, suddenly the young man burst with light, a symbol on his forehead. The original demon backed away, confused by the massive power he was sensing from the rather scrawny boy. I need to talk to Meliodas, but it looks like if he absorbs all those commandments, that won't be an option. I don't want to speak with the Demon King about cooperation. More confusion ripped through the awestruck group of warriors as the young man readied his staff.
What are you?
My name is Aladdin, original demon, and just to let you know, the original demon tensed as Aladdin grinned. I am nobody. The original demon scoffed.
A magician, I assume.
The original demon raised his blades, and the two humans behind the mysterious young man tensed. And so are you, I can tell, so let's see who wins. Both warriors brandished their weapons and lunged into battle. Before we hop into this battle of the two deadly magicians, please do me a favor and leave who you think is going to win in the comment section down below. And please leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Now, let's get into it. What's up guys, I got the pencil here, and it's time. We have a battle between two of the most masterful magicians in their respective worlds. A battle of two beings from a time long past, existing for a new purpose. Let us commence the discussion of the battle between Aladdin, the mightiest magician from Magi, versus the original demon, the sinner from 7 Deadly Sins. Let's break this battle down into 3 categories: power, speed, and abilities. Starting with power, Aladdin by the end of the series is very weird to scale, admittedly. Either you argue that he didn't actually destroy or damage the godly David proxy that was existing in the sacred palace, and thus he shouldn't be at that level of power. He should be more around the human realm of power, so like those country to continental tiers of powers, upscaling from characters like Sinbad in his human state and Arba and such like that with all the extreme magics. Or you can go with the idea that he should reasonably reach those godly levels, and here's why. The reason I put him up there on those godly levels is because Aladdin's actually able to play defense against David when he's in his godly state in the sacred palace. He's actually able to do it. He's able to block and redirect David's attacks. This is the same David who was casually creating entire universes with just his mere thoughts, and he didn't instantly execute Aladdin despite that being his goal and him directly admitting that he has no feeling towards Aladdin even though he's his grandson. So Aladdin is able to take hits from this godly copy, well, not take hits himself, but he's able to defend against it, meaning his defenses are up to par against a complex multiversal being, depending on where you want to put David after he puts himself above Ugo, who was already omnipotent in comparison to Aladdin's infinite multiverse. So then you go up from there and you get to David, and Aladdin's able to block off that and hold him off. And then you go from not only that, but you actually get to move to Alibaba, who actually manages to damage that young boy David. He does hit him straight up with an Amon blast and just completely tear through his face. Like, sure, David regenerates it off immediately, but if Alibaba didn't have the capacity to damage this godly copy of David, he wouldn't have even done anything to David. It would have simply just bounced off of him, but it didn't, and actually did damage. And Aladdin most certainly scales to Alibaba, so it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility that Aladdin does reach those levels. And on top of that, if we're going by the definition of duplicate, which is what Arba describes this David as, and what David ends up confirming by how he goes to immediately stop them from leaving after the whole plan is revealed, it seems like it wouldn't be entirely impossible that this duplicate of David is same to the spiritual body of David. As Arba says, he already moved on to another dimension, but that spiritual copy of David is still a god. It's the one that's orchestrating everything behind the copy, also the spell to rewrite the world. So that means that copy, since it's a duplicate, would have the same power as the original, and Aladdin goes on to destroy the original. You could argue if he was amped by Sheba, Solomon, and Ugo, but I don't think so. I think they just showed up for that little bit of moral support, and then bada bing, bada boom, David was destroyed. And that's pretty solid for Aladdin. Complex multiversal or low complex multiversal, depending on where you want to put David. Honestly, it's really weird with how the hierarchy of the gods works, because since David put himself above Ugo and Ugo was already guardian of the Sacred Palace and was an omnipotent being compared to Aladdin's multiverse, then you put it so that technically David would be an omnipotent being towards someone like Ugo. But yeah, it gets really, really weird when you're talking about stuff like that in Magi. I'll admit, it's very confusing. But there's that. There's Aladdin's possible scale. So you either put him to continental to low complex multiversal. Let's just lowball for the David scaling. And if that's the case, well, that's a pretty large range. I know. Please don't mind me. That's end of series Magi. That's not my fault. That's not my fault. But let's move on to the original demon. Now, the original demon is also very, very, very strong, depending on where you want to put him. So if you want to lowball him, he gets to around the planetary ranges. You can either do this off the lore meta, you can do this off the ideas presented with the calcs of Mother Catastrophe or Tarmiel's Ocean, which range from multi-continental for Tarmiel's Ocean, or you could get all the way up to large planetary for Mother Catastrophe by using speed in a factor of those calculations rather than just going off of whatever base speed of gravity and stuff like that. You would get to large planetary, and that's for beginning of series Diane. So a original demon who's literally likely thousands of times stronger than that Diane, even without the 10 Commandments from his prime self, would be extremely, extremely dangerous. And if that's the case, he's in a really solid spot. Like, the low range is multi-continental, high range is up there in the planetary to large planetary ranges. So extremely, extremely good power-wise. Moving on to speed, Aladdin is a very weird case. Once again, you can either just go with, well, he should be fast and light in the 1 to 10 times range by scaling off of other metal vessel users and other magicians such as Arba and other Magi such as Judar, who are able to react to light and stuff like that. And then Aladdin himself is able to blitz some of these magicians such as Arba, who is using her full strength from Alma Torran, meaning she's moving at her regular top speed, but she still gets blitzed by Aladdin, which is very, very good for him. You can either use that, or you can use the fact that Aladdin was able to fight in the Sacred Palace. Now, what does this mean? Well, the Sacred Palace has no time in it. In fact, it's above all concepts such as space and time. And this is stated by its creator, Ugo, so he would know best about what the Sacred Palace is, and it's a concept and a construct with no time in it. And usually, if you don't have time, you can't move, because the speed equation is obviously distance over time. And that means that young boy Aladdin was able to move when he shouldn't have been able to move, which gives him inaccessible speed, and that's much faster than light, since it's literally just doesn't make sense. It actually breaks the speed equation. You can go with that, or you can go even higher reasonably by taking a look at how he's able to fight against someone like David once again, because he's fighting up against David's proxy, and David's proxy once again is that complex multiversal god who's beyond concepts such as space and time, and should reasonably be around immeasurable since he's completely beyond those concepts in terms of speed. That's going extremely high, but you can do it if you really want to. I'd say inaccessible is the more mid area, considering Aladdin's fighting in the Sacred Palace. But if you do want to directly scale him to David off his speed, considering he's able to react to a David that does want to kill him, I'd say immeasurable. And there's Aladdin's speed. Moving over to the original demon speed, you have something a little bit nutty. So my man is massively, massively, massively fast and light. I'm not even just going to give you a specific number, because depending on where you want to start the number, it gets super wild. So you can either really, really lowball them and just say that no beginning of series characters are fast and light and they're all lightning timers. But even then, these lightning timers get blitzed so massively by characters who are way weaker than the original demon that eventually, just by going upwards, you would get to fast and light. Well, let's not even do that. Let's just go off of Gother. Let's say Gother. Mini Diane is able to dodge Gother's light beams, calced at 4.1 times the speed of light. And then once again, the original demon is thousands of times faster than that beginning of series Diane, based on just upscaling countless times from different characters such as Galland and so on and so forth. And then you want to go even nuttier, you have Oslo, who's calced around 33 times the speed of light due to his interactions with a transforming Mael. And if you want to go off of Oslo, who was so fodder that Meliodas had to look at him funny, I'm kidding, Meliodas had to pull out his sword a little bit, but a beginning of series Meliodas is able to bully Oslo, who's around not even Holy Knight level really, and he was able to blitz light 33 times over. And then you just upscale from there instead of upscaling from Mini Diane, and you see how crazy things get in terms of speed for the original demon. Can I give you a specific number? Probably. Will it be anything important? No, it's just extremely high. It's massively fast and light. So let's get onto their abilities. Now, there are a lot of these, so allow me to hit the speed run button real quick. So Aladdin is adept in fire magic, giving him access to things like I can't even, like, I'm not even gonna try to pronounce their actual names because that's way too much. So I'm just gonna say their English names. Scorching Heat Double Palms, where he just shoots a widespread blast of fire magic from his staff, and he can just boom straight out of other things. And then he has Scorching Heat Consecutive Bullets, where he just summons multiple different fireballs to all rain down upon you. He can boil you from the inside out by increasing the temperature of the water in your body, and he can also create illusions on top of that. And then moving onwards to his wind magic, he can form a tornado, which just keeps growing as time goes on. And then he also has light magic, which allows him to just fire a ray of light at an opponent. Then he has lightning magic, which allows him to just drop lightning bolts at somebody. Then on top of that, he has gravity magic, which allows him the ability to fly, and also with gravity magic he can create golems, and these golems are able to use the heat magic such as the heat blast, which they can fire from their palms at will. And then on top of that, he has strength magic, and this magic is basically the ability for him to manipulate the fundamental structures of the world, and he's basically able to just repel attacks and redirect them with the usage of this magic. So basically, if you fire something at him, he can stop it, turn it around, and fire it right back at you with the same amount of force, or with whatever he really pleases. He redirects it, he chooses its force, he manipulates physics itself. So he can do a lot with stuff like that. He can also use it defensively just to block things in general, not necessarily repel them. He can literally just bend space around him. Then on top of that, he can also just hit you and then lock that hit. So basically, you're going to be constantly held by that force of propulsion that the initial hit had, and you'll just keep going and going and going and going until the end. His magic doesn't necessarily run out, so until you hit something else, the force will just keep going. So if he fires you off into space, you're kind of just keeping it moving. And then on top of that, he has the, hold on, let me try this, Alchemia al Quadima, the basically alchemic technique. He's allowed to touch something and then replace their very molecules and substance with something else. He can basically deconstruct and reconstruct you into something else. He basically replaces your molecules with other molecules at will. He doesn't really have to use the same molecules. He can just rearrange them into completely new ones, such as what he did with the vessel of Arba Hakue. And that's his main abilities. He can also vibrate his staff really fast, but I don't think it's going to work that well. Then off of purely attack-based abilities into something more defense-based, he has the magic sensory abilities, meaning he's able to sense magic, and on top of that, he has his mother's technique, which is known as the 8-headed defensive wall, which is an evolution of the Borg, which is a regular defensive wall, but this one actually attacks and defends at the same time, attacking people while keeping the user protected safely inside. Really strong offense, really strong defense, really good for Aladdin. However, let's move on from Aladdin to the original demon. The original demon is a menace among menaces. He's a demon, obviously, it's in his title, and that means he has access to all the demon biological perks, meaning he's able to heal himself using darkness, he's able to create constructs such as weapons using darkness, he's able to manipulate darkness into shields, he's able to do a whole lot with that darkness. He can also fly using it, which is just an extra perk he has. Then on top of that, he can sense magic very well from hundreds of miles away, and he can also take out a person's soul just by touching them and or speaking an incantation, which allows him to just draw out souls from a distance. Then he has his own natural magical ability, which is Crisis, which allows him to get stronger the more damage he takes, aka the more of his life gets whittled away, the stronger he becomes with time. And then on top of that, he has his own regular specific magical abilities that pertain to him himself. These abilities include Crimson Requiem, where he creates an aura of heat around one of his hands, and then he fires it out in a general direction, which allows him to melt anything that really gets caught in the vicinity. Then he has Dragon Claw, where he's able to transform his staff into a Dragon Claw and stab at his target with it. Then he has Absolute Cancel, which can completely negate any single magic that's being used, as long as he either taps it with his staff or aims it properly. Then he has Exterminate Ray, which allows him to just fire a beam of energy at his opponent that's meant to exterminate them. Then he has Full Counter, which can reflect magic attacks back at the opponent with at least double the force, and he's able to do this if he's able to read the timing of the attack. If the attack's too fast or he gets outplayed, he cannot use Full Counter. And then he has Grudge Blade, where he fires energy blades from his staff at his opponent. He can also just spam this, like fire a whole ton of them at once. Then he can also create illusions, which allows him to just create fake images in the world around him. He doesn't have to touch his opponent, all he has to do is spawn the illusions. Then he has a magical defensive wall, where he's able to guard himself from certain large scale attacks. Then he has Meteor Works, where he calls down multiple meteors from the sky to destroy an entire area. On top of that, he has Microscopic, which allows him to shrink down his opponent as long as he lands the attack on them, and they go down to microscopic sizes, assuming they're a normal sized person, but it makes a giant just extremely tiny, like the size of someone's hand. Then he can also tear off his own flesh and make little tiny attackers, which are able to do decent damage, but they're very quickly stomped on by anyone who actually has a decent amount of power behind them. Then he's also able to cast the True Night, which allows him to just completely coat the entire area in darkness, which actually amps him to twice his power considering it's True Night, so it brings out their power amp that they get, making them twice as strong at night. And then he has Wind Magic, which allows him to just create a vortex around him of extremely sharp winds. Then he has Absolute Order, so when he points at somebody with a symbol on his hand, they have to obey him or else they die. At least going off of what happened to Gother, a person's neck snaps. The only reason Gother lived is because he's a doll and he doesn't actually have a way to conventionally die. And then there is finally Resonant, which basically makes it so if you look him in the eyes with this ability activated, he can force you to mimic whatever motions he does himself, such as what Cusack did to Arthur. Then he has Hellblaze Omega, where it's a concentrated ball of Hellblaze that comes out in bursts. And there it is, there's all their magical abilities, that's all their power, and that's all their speed. So who actually wins when we get to the battle itself? Well, it depends on which version you put up against which version. If you take a lowball Aladdin and you assume, well, he should be around Country to Continental, and he should just be a bit fast and light, and then you take the original demon who's also fast and light, except he's actually way stronger, like in the multi-continental ranges, then you're getting into problems for Aladdin. He just can't really do much because he's going to be around the same speed, and with all of the original demon's abilities, including Absolute Cancel, it means the Borg is going to get negated. It's going to mean that all of Aladdin's attempts are going to have to be like extremely luck-based and concentrate. He's gonna have to basically try to boil the original demon from the inside while avoiding any of his hacks and hoping the original demon just doesn't speak his soul away, especially if the original demon is going for the kill. And the thing is, the original demon is just going to keep widening the gap in both speed and power if he keeps building up with Crisis, because this is the original demon in modern times whose life is constantly burning away anyway. So while Aladdin's hexes would be good, I don't think they'd be enough to really handle someone like the original demon. Actually, technically, if we're using a low ball, no, because even once you get to, even if you start with lightning timing, if you include blitz stacking, then yeah, the original demon gets high enough in speed to at least compete, if not directly outspeed Aladdin in terms of combat. And while Aladdin has very potent abilities, he needs to be able to land the abilities. And considering his 8-headed defensive wall will just get by an absolute cancel, just popped right on open like a bubble, I think it's not going to do good for Aladdin because he's going to slowly get outsped and he's already massively outpowered from the start. So I don't think that Aladdin does very well. However, if I were to up Aladdin's speed but keep his power the same and say Aladdin gets into the inaccessible tiers, then the entire battle flips, because despite Aladdin not having the power to really damage the original demon if we keep him at those country to continental levels, the main issue is he can just touch the original demon and then absolutely disintegrate him. The original demon's already falling apart, so he just has to expedite that process. He can do this by using his alchemic magic. He could just boil the original demon's blood on the inside and make him explode. And here's the thing about the alchemic magic. We know that demons should really die around the cellular level. That's where the regeneration sort of stops, going off the statements by Tarmiel and Sario. You need to reduce a demon down to its molecules to stop its healing. And while Estarossa does survive, he actually does. That's the weird thing. He's turned into a demon by the commandment, so technically he is a demon, so he does survive long enough. But if the attack had finished, it likely would have killed Estarossa based on how he was reacting. So I believe that Aladdin could literally just deconstruct the original demon, since while he's strong, his individual molecules shouldn't be strong enough to resist Aladdin's hacks. And that's where Aladdin really kicks in as a monster, if he gets the speed advantage by giving him his inaccessible status through fighting in the Sacred Palace, because then he can just throw everything back at the original demon. He doesn't have to win, he just has to stay alive, because the original demon is going to be destroying himself, and every single attack that the original demon throws is essentially going to be moving in slow motion to Aladdin, who can literally just strength magic flick it right back at him, basically like he did to all Thalman with their own extreme magics. So every single time the original demon goes to throw out a Crimson Requiem or anything close to anything dangerous, if he throws a Meteor Works at him, every single one of those attacks is getting redirected right on top of him. And that's if I keep Aladdin at a low level of power. If I actually give him his arguably valid David scaling, well, there's not a single character in the Seven Deadly Sins verse that could stop Aladdin at that point. Man's complex, multiversal, inaccessible to immeasurable levels of speed. He would absolutely dominate the entire verse because he can just do it. He's that strong at that point. But that's the question. If you use that, I don't really see the way the original demon can win. Even if I give the original demon his highest props. Say we use Oslo as the basis for his speed. Doesn't matter because inaccessible to immeasurable speed. If I use large planetary as the basis for original series Diane. I mean, not original series, beginning of series Diane. And I go higher and higher and higher and higher after the fact. Talking about the different levels that the original demon would be on compared to that beginning of series Diane. If we go with the large planetary beginning of series Mother Catastrophe. Then we could get him close, and honestly that'd do a way better for his power against a lower level Aladdin that we don't take any of the higher level scaling into. But then once again the hacks roll in and they just like the original demon is not defending his molecules, and I don't think he'll be too happy when his organs are getting boiled from the inside out. So I don't think he'd be able to do very well in that case. And that's the thing. I'll completely admit, if I use a lower speed, if I use a mid-speed Aladdin and I also go with a higher powered original demon but keep Aladdin's power on the low end and say he shouldn't scale to David, then the main issue just becomes that Aladdin can't damage the original demon traditionally and needs to use his own attacks against him or just resort to his hacks. But when you're inaccessible compared to massively fast and light, it's not that hard to land your hacks at that point because your opponent's never hitting you. And especially with Aladdin's defense, not only would he have the 8-headed defensive wall, but on top of that, he would have the strength magic, meaning he would be able to basically just control where the original demon is going, since the original demon wouldn't be able to fight back against that. And that's where the fight comes into real contest. So let's just say I remove all the power, I remove all the speed. Say I make it equal stats. What happens then? Well, it actually gets a lot more interesting because I could actually see the original demon winning that one more often. He just has to instantly resort to his hacks first. That comes down to a battle of who hacks is who first. Because if Aladdin tries to sit in his Borg, that's getting absolute canceled and he's getting chopped in half basically, unless he resorts to using the strength magic, which he can very, very quickly. And that's the thing. Aladdin has such a specific set of hacks that I think they're more likely to pop off than the original demons, because we never see the original demon just a soul real quick. So, but we know he can do it. And that becomes the question. If the original demon stands 15 feet away from Aladdin and just goes and then eats Aladdin's soul, then, well, good game. Aladdin isn't really shown to resist anything close to soul ripping, especially the way it's done in Seven Deadly Sins. But if we go with the idea that Aladdin is the one on the offensive, mainly using his hacks such as strength magic, basically controlling the battlefield, redirecting all the original demon's attacks, possibly deconstructing him on a molecular level and then putting him into a new state, I think that he'd be able to pretty handily deal with the original demon, even with equal stats. That's the thing. The original demon, very, very hacks character, but the issue in this case, when stats are unequalized and we put both of them at their mid ends, is Aladdin's speed. That's the main problem. And then if we put them both at their high ends, it's Aladdin's power and speed and hacks. But then when they're put on more equal playing grounds, I'd say that's when it becomes more of a 50-50, with the original demon having the ability to cancel out a lot of Aladdin's defensive options. And the question becomes, would he be able to see it though? And would he be able to tell it's magic? Because the original demon would likely be able to sense the strength magic, but he can't really cancel it out because it's not a present thing in the he would have to basically absolute cancel the world itself, because strength magic manipulates the fundamental ley lines in the world and allows Aladdin to basically bend reality in a sense so that he can control physics and where things go. So the original demon would literally have to cancel out physics. I think the original demon would have to try and seal Aladdin's magic himself. Like, he would have to get his hands on Aladdin or like seal Aladdin down somehow, or he could resort to Resonant and just get Aladdin to try and kill himself with his own staff. I think if the original demon doesn't do that and he tries to fight Aladdin head on, not only will Aladdin be able to basically just bully him and keep him out of range with the strength magic, but on top of that, the original demon is going to destroy himself eventually, even with the consistent power-ups. So, that's a really interesting fight. So honestly, if I'm being real with y'all, top of the line, if we're going straight up power to power, if we put both of their peaks, Aladdin wins easy, no problem. Based off his higher scaling, based off his higher speed, immeasurable and low complex multiversal versus, I mean, like, probably large planetary, approaching small star levels, then maybe you could go a little bit wild. No, I'm kidding, you can't. It's low complex multiversal versus small star level, and it's immeasurable speed versus massively faster than light plus. So I think Aladdin at their peaks takes it pretty easily. I think at their lowest ends, I think the original demon takes it pretty convincingly because of the advantage in speed still, and of course he has the power advantage by a long shot compared to a low-balled Aladdin. And then around their mid ends, I think Aladdin's speed is what really dictates the battle. He'll be able to control it way too well for the original demon to actually do anything. So there's that. But what do you guys think about this fight? This was an actually really fun fight to talk about. It's just that these two have so many abilities, and a lot of them either get negged by each other or just aren't that useful in the context of the fight. What do you guys think about this fight? Please tell me in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Zach the Pencil, writing off.